The length of stroke will depend on the point at which the boat speed starts to drop. This can vary. There is no one right length, no one size fits all for length of stroke. I'd suggest practicing different lengths of stroke and rates for different distances and testing which is the most effective for your crew. Ideally, use a GPS. However, if you don't own one, you could test by getting another crew to paddle alongside without changing their rate or intensity, while your crew tries different rates and stroke lengths to see which is the most effective. Another option is to time trial the different strokes and rates over a set distance. Remember what you're trialling though. Don't include a race start in these trials. Get the waka moving at a steady pace, not a race pace, before you hit the start of the time trial distance. The length of the stroke is defined by the point at which the boat speed starts to drop. So ideally you are exiting the paddle immediately prior to the drop in boat speed. This is the way that I choose to exit the paddle. Some people will lift the paddle straight up at the back of their stroke. The focus here should be on the crew exiting and returning to the front of the stroke at exactly the same time and in exactly the same way, not on individuals trying to get to the front of the stroke as quickly as they can individually. The only length of stroke and the only speed of return that is correct is whatever number one is doing. It is then up to the coach to ensure that number one is doing whatever is most efficient for the speed of that particular crew. There is no one size fits all. To demonstrate this, let's check out the first 100 metres of Team Aotearoa's 1000 metre sprint final. As you can see, some crews go for a long stroke and a quick return. Others allow the waka to glide momentarily. What is best for your crew is relevant to 1. How much power and consequently glide during the return is generated by your crew, and 2. The point at which the boat speed drops. Logically, you want the paddle entry of each stroke to occur immediately before the boat speed drops. The rate will vary depending on conditions, but it is typically somewhere around 60 strokes per minute. Once the crew is more experienced, they can practice doing a faster stroke. To give you an idea of a competitive rate, check out the last 50 metres of Team Aotearoa's 500 metre sprint final. Remember, a faster stroke is not effective unless every crew member is capable of doing it efficiently and in time. It is not uncommon for a slight difference in rate to occur between the left and right sides, remembering that the rate is set by seat 1 paddler. If you find this happening, compare each side in regard to these things. Is your bottom hand in the same place on the shaft? Are you holding the T-grip the same? Is your point of entry the same? Is your flexibility and torso rotation the same? As mentioned previously, it might be helpful to place a visual marker on each side of the waka for seat 1 to judge the ideal point of entry. One of the most critical foundation skills is timing. It doesn't matter how strong any one individual is. A crew of 6 people with less individual power who can synchronise their timing will go faster than a crew of 6 strong individuals with bad timing. Given the importance of timing, seat 2 can be the most difficult seat to find an effective paddler to fill because of the offside timing skill required. They need to try and see the exit of seat 1 and also cross-check with the top hand drive of seat 1. Here are some tips to help your crew stay in time. Maintain visual contact with the paddle you are following. Don't be distracted by what is going on around you. Watch the exit so that you exit at the same time as the paddler you are following. This is the most critical part of timing. Return to the front of the stroke at the same speed. Enter at the same time. If you don't exit at the same time as the paddler you're following, it is still possible to have good entry timing but your body won't be in the same strong body position as the other paddlers at the entry. However, timing is not just about going through the motion of entry and exit. It is also at which point within the stroke does the coach want the paddlers to apply their power. It is the coach's job to ensure that each paddler is thinking exactly the same thing in regard to where power is applied in the stroke. Is it at the front of the stroke, the back of the stroke, or is it through the entire stroke? If paddlers are applying power at different points in the stroke, you will physically feel that the timing is out. For example, when you feel as though you're being jolted after you've applied power in the stroke. Most crews will do approximately 12 strokes on each side. This may vary depending on whether your changes aren't good, in which case you might do more strokes before changing sides. The universal call to indicate that the crew should be ready to change sides is hup or hut. Upon hearing hup, paddlers then do one more stroke and take their paddle to the other side of the waka. When you pass the paddle across to the other side of the waka, the catching hand will grip the shaft between the passing hand and the shoulders of the blade. Maintain a firm grip with the catching hand and slide the passing hand up the shaft towards the tee. If you have a firm grip with the catching hand, you won't need to get your passing hand over the top of the tee on the first stroke. If it doesn't go over the top of the tee on the first stroke, get it over the top on the second. Slide the bottom hand one fist up again from the shoulders of the blade. Especially in the context of a sprint race, it is important that changing sides does not disrupt the flow of the crew. Check out the seamless nature of Team Aotearoa's changes in their 500 metre sprint final. In changing sides, you should be aiming to get the paddle into the water as close to the front of the stroke as you would with any other stroke, and for the rest of that stroke to be as efficient as any other stroke. Turning strokes can be divided into two categories: stationary and moving. Stationary strokes are those where the paddle is held stationary in the water and rely on boat speed to be effective. These include the post, and the poke. Moving strokes are those strokes where the paddle is moving, so a forward and a reverse stroke is a moving stroke. And in the instance of turning a waka, a draw is also a moving stroke, as is a pry. As well as for sprint racing, it is necessary for safety that seats 1 and 2 are capable in assisting to turn the waka. If the crew is training in windy conditions, it is difficult and sometimes impossible for the steerer to turn the waka by themselves. These strokes should be learnt even if the crew is not intending to race at a Sprints National. Usually only seats 1 and 6 will use the poke. The matter of when to use the stroke is discussed in the section about turns, but for the how-to, watch on. place the tip of the paddle against the right side of the hull above the waterline. Slide the blade down the hull until the entire blade is in the water. If seat 1 is choosing to poke on the right instead of posting out left, you would put your poke in next to your hip. This acts as a more effective pivot point than posting out left. If you put the poke in more forward of your hip, it has a similar effect to just posting out on the left. As with the post, this stroke relies on boat speed to be effective. See it put into action in Team Aotearoa's 1000 metre sprint final. We'll talk more about the steerer's use of the poke to maintain a straight line in the steering strokes section. Going into the third and final turn in the 1000 metre sprint final, take a look at the first stationary stroke used by seats 1 and 2. This is the post. As with the other turning strokes discussed in this section, you can hear more about when to use it in the turn section. Aim to have the shaft vertical. Maintain a little bend in the elbow of the bottom arm. Fully immerse the blade. You must have your body well locked in with your legs so that you can get your torso out of the waka and use your core strength to maintain a strong pivot point. If both buttocks are still on the seat when you post, you will be relying solely on arm strength. This is not as effective for the post and particularly less effective for the draw. Have the blade angled toward the flag or whatever is being turned around. As soon as the boat speed drops to a point where there is no resistance on the blade, which renders the stationary stroke ineffective, you'll see that the draw commences. You'll see a different style of post coming out of turn 2. I'm paddling on the right, but then I didn't think we'd quite clear the lane buoys. So I maintain the same paddle grip, but bring the paddle across the waka into a post position, adjacent to my knee and close to the waka. It's a handy and effective stroke, so practice using it.